sorry. You can't unring the bell. Ringing app, apparently.
Hey guys, Pete here. Well, the most fun thing that we've been up to has now come to an end. Today I'll be talking about Severance Season 1, Episode 9, the finale of the first season, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised that this was a cliffhanger, that they would end that way one more time, but that is what happened. But there's also good news to go along with it. Apple TV Plus has greenlit Season 2, so we know that there is more coming, but we're going to have to wait for a while to see what happens in the aftermath of the innies waking up outside the office. That is primarily what happened in the finale. There's a lot of interesting stuff. We got some answers to some big questions, and we got some new ones. And I'm going to throw out a quick spoiler warning. Obviously, if you haven't watched the finale of the first season, there's going to be a ton of crazy spoilers in this. So that's your warning. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. The thing that worked for me about Severance right from the very beginning was the idea that having a device inserted into your brain to separate your work and personal lives sounds absolutely absurd, but at the same time altogether possible. You can have the thoughts, no one should ever do this, and some people would definitely do this in your head at the same time. Just like you can have the ideas, that was as thrilling, masterfully crafted, intense and enjoyable of an episode of television that I can imagine. And I can't believe I have to wait for maybe a year or more to find out what happens next, sharing space inside your head. The premise sets up a lot of fascinating questions. Chief among them is what kind of people would voluntarily sign up for this procedure. Throughout the first season, we saw some of the motivations for the normal people in this process. Using Mark as the example, he had tragedy in his life, he lost his wife, and he thought that being able to check out 8 hours a day would help him deal with that. Petey appeared to be similarly motivated. The finale presented us with some alternate motivations. Of course, the big twist is that Helly is really Helena Eagan, the daughter of Lumon's current CEO, Jame Eagan. The motivation there is to create some positive PR for their family-run corporation and this controversial program. We didn't learn much about Irv's initial motivations, but he does appear to be working towards understanding and possibly exposing what's happening on the severed floor. So after you get past who might get this procedure, you can move on to what happens to these severed employees in this new life where they never leave the office. Who do they become? How much of their Audi is still in there? And how are they different? The revelation is that because the innie versions don't have the same experiences and aren't in fact driven by their Audi's motivations, things can go wrong. In response to her uncomfortable transition, Helly ends up siding with her coworkers. And if Irv hadn't fallen in love with Bert, he may have continued to be a model employee indefinitely. There might not be enough coffee in the world for his Audi to set off that integration or whatever he was trying to accomplish there. But to recap what happened in the episode, it does pick up right where episode 8 left off. Dylan is flipping the switch and activating the innies outside the office. In a great three-way split screen shot, you see Irv, Helly, and Mark all switch over at the same time in their different locations. Initially, the focus shifts to Mark, and you hear that Harmony is asking him if he's all right. Remember, his Audi was telling her that he was thinking of quitting the job. She encouraged him to do that. She's trying to continue the conversation, saying that maybe he should talk to his sister since it's a big decision. He's somewhat disoriented, but he doesn't give away the game. From his perspective, this is directly after he followed Irv and Helly up in the elevator. He should be as prepared as he could be considering the circumstances. It's nice here that you can pick up on the slight changes that Adam Scott employs between how he portrays the two different versions of Mark. Because of that, Cobel senses something's off, but she has no reason to be suspicious. In his apartment, Irv wakes up to Motorhead blaring on the boombox, holding a palette knife in his hand. He sees the painting of the elevator that goes down to the testing floor. He looks around the room and he sees that there are several completed versions of this same painting sitting against the walls. Helly wakes up at the gala, and most people expected that this was going to happen after the last episode. And the first voice you hear there is familiar, it's Natalie's. She also senses something might be off, and even asks her how many glasses of champagne she's had. They need her nimble, and you learn that she was talking to the board, and they're really grateful for this thing that she's doing. They run into Gabby, the senator's wife Devin met at the birthing center, and this is where we get the reveal of her full name, Helena Eagan. So at this point, neither of the two of them that are around other people are acting very natural, but again, there's no reason for anyone to be suspicious of them. I should mention that there are several shots of Dylan cut throughout this entire episode where he's stretching between the two switches to keep them open. This is not a position that he'll be able to hold indefinitely. We understand that. And it makes for a ticking clock situation. Mark wanders around. He almost gives things up by asking his sister, "How's our baby?" But she just sort of writes it off to this weird brother and sister banner that we've seen them do. A little later, he learns that it's his sister from two of the guests that were at the no-food dinner party from episode 1. He meets Rebecca, who was also there, and then tries to start a conversation with Devin, but then Rickon announces that the reading is about to begin. This is something that I was really looking forward to, and I love the look on his face when he sees that they're getting ready to read his favorite book. He's absolutely awed whenever he sees Rickon, and eventually puts it together that this is his brother-in-law when he dedicates the reading to his daughter Eleanor. Innie Mark is just completely lit up when this reading begins, and Harmony leans over his shoulder so that she can read along. At the first break, he goes out to talk to Rickon and tells him how brilliant the book is. He tells him that this book opened the world up for him and that it changed his life. Naturally, Rickon finds this strange, but at the same time, he's thrilled to learn that Mark not only read the book but actually likes it, so it feeds right into his ego. He asks if they're friends, and Rickon tells him that he knows that there's been tension between them because he feels like he looks down on him for doing the severance procedure, but he understands that he had to deal with Gemma's passing in his own way. He brings up seeing a picture of the four of them together on a hike, but he's pulled away before he can show it to him. He goes again to look for his sister so he can complete his mission, tell somebody what's going on, and he gets stopped by Harmony. And then as he's getting away from her, he accidentally calls her Miss Cobel, which leads to her realizing that something is definitely up. Devin is holding the baby who's crying, and she passes her off to Cobel so that she can go talk to Mark alone. It cuts away just as he's about to reveal that he's actually the innie version of Mark. Irving meets his dog Radar, then he looks through his apartment where he comes across a footlocker. Inside, he finds things from his father's time in the Navy, and beneath that, he finds a trove of documents about Lumon and Severance. There's a newspaper clipping about a severed worker suing for information following an injury, with a headline that reads, "Lumon needs to be held accountable." If you look closely, you can make some of the article out, and it says that the employee lost the sensation in one of his fingers, where he could have made a full recovery if they would have been honest with him about what happened. Instead, they told him to go home and put a salve on it, and now he's suing, trying to find out what really happened. There's a list of severed employees, and he finds Bert's name and address on it. There's also a map. He opens that up. It has addresses of known employees marked on it, and he figures out how to get from his apartment to where Bert lives. He puts on his coat, grabs his car keys, and gets inside to try to make his way over to see Bert. At the gala, Gabby is talking about how much having kids changes your life to Helly, and she says she couldn't have done it without a little help, and she gives her a kind of smile where it looks like there's an inside joke between them. And then she basically confirms that she's had the procedure when she says that she can't believe that there's people out there who would want to outlaw severance. Her senator husband comes over and says that the photo display was very moving, but he already knew how he would be voting. It becomes apparent that she's part of this campaign to help change people's mind about the procedure, and it's all part of a bigger plan to make legislation that would protect it. He thanks her, and then he asks her to thank her father if she sees him. She does see the large photo displays that are the centerpiece of the gala. They say Helly, a severed story. They're pictures of her and her co-workers in MDR, and these large rotating light cubes. She pauses at one with Mark on it, which reminds us of this newfound connection they have, and then she watches an interview with her outie. In that, she talks about her father, and you start to get the idea that he's probably the current CEO, Jame Eagan. She's essentially doing PR speak, talking about how Lumon is a big family, united under the same values as laid out by the core principles. She starts to look overwhelmed, so she goes into the bathroom to collect herself. And then her father is let in to talk to her. he is in fact Jame Eagan. He looks exactly like his wax figure from the Perpetuity Wing, and after he compliments her on how nice she looks, he asks if she's still in pain. This makes it sound like this is the first time they've seen each other since the suicide attempt. He says that he cried in bed when they told him what she did to him, what that innie did to him, and there's noticeable disdain in his voice when he says the word innie. He thanks her for going through with the procedure and tells her that the grandfather would cherish what she's done, referring to Keir, and then he adds that one day she'll sit with him at his revolving, which I'm sure is a term that we're going to be wondering about until season 2 starts. He asks if she remembers when he brought home the first chip to show her. He refers to it as the prototype and says that it had the blue and green lights back then. And that makes you think about the green and blue badges and the way that those were reversed in the paintings of the coup. He says that he remembers that she told him that it was so pretty and that everyone in the whole world should get one, and now he says that they will. They'll all be Keir's children. Natalie comes in to interrupt them to say it's time for her to give her speech. Left alone, she pauses at the mirror and she begins to recite the compunction statement that she had to say when she was in the break room. Cobel has left the party in her car. She's driving recklessly towards the Lumon office trying to get Milchick on the phone. Mark has made his confession to Devin. He tells her that they need to get inspectors to go and check out what's happening on the severed floor. She mentions that his Audi has been trying to figure out what they do at work, and he responds that he just wants to know why he went through with the procedure, and that leads to her explaining that he lost his wife. She explains how he tried to go back to his job as a professor, but he wasn't able to because she was still in his veins, making everything hurt. Just after we see Harmony pass Irv going the other way, she finally gets Milchick on the phone. She tells him that the OTC has been activated and that she just saw Mark as his innie at the party. She believes that Dylan is behind it and that they were planning this all along. She tells him to get to the security office and stop Dylan. He takes off sprinting down the hall, but he can't get inside the office when he gets there because of Dylan's belt. Devin tells Mark that she thinks they need to be careful about who they talk to because Lumon has their hands in so many pies. She thinks the right idea might be to contact journalists that Rickon knows. While they're talking about that, he remembers to ask her why Cobel was there. He explains that that's his boss, and Devin realizes that it's who she knows as Mrs. Selvig. This freaks her out because she knows she gave her baby to her, and now they can't find her. The whole party starts to look for her, and at this point, everything is starting to come together. Helly's getting ready to go on stage. Irv has pulled up outside Bert's house, and Milchick continues to cut through his belt while he tries to talk Dylan down, offering him new perks, ones that he says he's never even heard about, like paintball and coffee cozies. And Dylan just says he wants to remember his son being born. At this, Milchick tells him he has 2 others and promises to tell him their names if he just opens the door. Harmony does arrive at the gala. She runs inside in such a hurry that her car rolls away in the commotion, and you see the valets chasing after it. Inside, Natalie's preparing Helly, telling her to just stick with the talking points. Use the line about how you see your innie as your sister. Irving sees Bert through his front window and sees that he's with another man. It looks like they're together and they're packing up for a trip. They do find Eleanor in her car seat in one of the bedrooms, and it's hilarious that this other guy takes the credit for being the one who found her. On stage, Natalie is warming up the crowd and she's talking about how there's been setbacks, bumps in the road, but now they're on the verge of a revolution, a kind and empathetic revolution that puts the human being in the center of industry. At the same time, Cobel grabs Helly. She asks, "Is it you?" And Helly looks at her and says, "I'm going to kill your company." Cobel responds, "Your friends are going to suffer. Mark will suffer. You'll be long gone, but we'll keep them alive in pain." And of course, this is something that we'll be coming back to. Helly's pulled away to go on stage. As she's coming out, you see Mark pick up a photo from his wedding. He recognizes Mrs. Casey. Irv gets out of his car and goes up to Bert's door. Milchick continues to cut, and Helly introduces herself saying, "My name is Helly R. I'm an innie, and everything they've told you about Severance is a lie." Irv continues to pound on the door, shouting Bert's name. Mark runs out of the room looking for Devin. Helly continues saying we're not happy, we're miserable. They torture us down there. Milchick finally gets the door open and charges towards Dylan. Helly is pulled away, tackled on stage by Natalie, and Mark shouts to Devin she's alive, just as Milchick tackles Dylan, causing him to let go of the switches. You see Mark switch back over to his Audi and the episode ends there, and you have to hope that they will understand that he was talking about the picture with this whole Eleanor gone missing commotion happening at the same time. Of course the baby's alive, but that's not who he was talking about. So yeah, this was a fantastic episode of television to cap off a fantastic season. They layered the tension on top of itself, and also made a ton of references to things that happened earlier to make it clear that you really need to pay attention. I think there probably would have been a backlash if they hadn't announced season 2. But as things stand, it's a confident way to end things. Keep those big questions out there, keep us thinking about the answers because there's a lot of fun in that, while also giving us enough to know that it will all eventually lead to something. This is all propped up by terrific performances by an amazing cast, snappy writing, deliberate pacing, genuinely funny moments, and a strong vision in the directing. At the center of the story, you've got Mark who's trying to become something. He's lost his partner, and that's left him not knowing who he is. He made what to us doesn't appear to be a sound decision, but in the end it may lead him on the journey he needs to go on in order to find himself. The surface level critique of the way we view work and what we go through is enough to pull you in, and then where it really gets fun is that the innies are basically children. They're fully formed adults that are influenced by things the same way as you and me, but they have zero experience shaping them as individuals. Lumon is a corporation that certainly has some cultish undertones. There's something going on with these Eagans, even more so than the normal kind of thing that happens at real corporations all the time in our world. And they're trying to mold these people into model employees. In light of that, what happened in the finale is basically a disaster, but based on everything we've seen, there's only 2 real problems that they might run into. Mark talking to Devin, and then the spectacle of what Helly said. The way the gala was set up, it was intended to put a positive spin on the severance procedure. So you would imagine they invited some skeptical people there to witness this thing, and she did a pretty good job of tanking that. They are pretty powerful though, so you have to wonder if they would be able to keep it quiet, or at least minimize the impact of what happened. I thought it stood out that Cobel was confident in saying that they were going to keep the innies alive in pain. We know that Audi Helly wouldn't be supportive of what her innie did. I don't anticipate her changing her mind about that. And for the others, my thoughts went to these other protocols we saw, like the clean slate, which makes you think there's a good chance that they could just wipe their memories. It feels like there's a non-zero chance that the next time they all come together at work, they won't remember what happened. It's not easy to see where they would go from there, though. A big part of what happened in this first season is that MDR came together and formed this bond. As a team, they were able to make it out and see the real world. If they make it so that Lumon has the ability to wipe their minds, then there almost has to be a situation where they can do that all over again. So right now, I think they'll all probably end up back there, working in MDR, probably even Helly, and we'll see how the experience has changed them. We'll see the backlash from Lumon and how their managers respond, and get closer to understanding all the big mysteries in the process. I think what Irv's up to became a really interesting question during this finale. And of course, we're all still wondering what's going on with Mark and Gemma, aka Miss Casey. The way that Irv is drinking coffee to keep his innie tired, possibly trying to get him to fall asleep at work, and then also repeatedly painting the same image of the testing floor, which he really shouldn't know about, certainly makes you wonder. He seems to be working towards integrating the innie and Audi by passing that information, telling him to go looking for this elevator. The whole romance with Bert was one of the most fun things to watch because of the situation they find themselves in, and it made for a sad reveal at the end. But I'm still thinking there's more to come from these two, I'm just not sure how. The way things were left, his Audi is going to be at the door when Bert opens it. And perhaps since his name was on the map, they'll already know each other. Maybe he's already reached out to some of these severed employees. Mark just has to go looking for Gemma. What's going on with her and that testing floor is a central mystery. In conjunction with the story of him finding himself, being the central character, it all makes Mark seem special not just to Harmony, but possibly to the Eagan's overall goal. And that is an even bigger question. I suppose we're closer to understanding in that we know that they want to make everyone Kier's children, but what exactly does that mean? Waffle parties for everyone? Get people to get the chip, not just for work, but in the way that Gabby's using it, and then flip the switch? Activate the Kier army? I mean, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I'll take some time and think about it all, and then I'll put out a couple more videos. I know I said I'd do that last week, but I got COVID and I still haven't really recovered yet. But there is more Severance content to come. I think this is a good place to leave this one. I can't wait to hear what you guys thought about the finale, how your ideas about the show have changed, what your theories are going into season 2. So make sure you let me know all about them in the comments. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.